Before the headlines, before the heartbreak, before the horror, there was her. A young woman with laughter in her voice, kindness in her heart, and dreams that could fill the sky. Her name was Isabel Hartman, 22 years old, college student, daughter, best friend. A young woman who, by all accounts, had everything going for her. She wasn't famous. She didn't live a life of glamour or excess. She was the kind of person who lit up a room just by entering it. The kind of soul that made you believe the world could be good again. Isabel grew up in a small town nestled in the outskirts of Portland, Oregon, a community where doors were rarely locked and neighbors still waved across fences. She was the second of 3 children, raised in a modest home by a mother who worked as a school nurse and a father who ran a local auto repair shop. From the moment she could speak, Isabel had a way with people. Her teachers called her the natural peacemaker. She volunteered at shelters, organized charity runs, and always remembered people's birthdays. At Lincoln High School, she was voted most likely to make the world better. In college, she majored in psychology. Her dream? To become a therapist for abuse survivors. Some said she was drawn to the pain of others because she wanted to ease it. Others believed it was simply because she cared, more deeply than most. Her roommate, Jenna, once described her like this: Izzy didn't just listen to you, she heard you. She had this gift of making you feel like you weren't invisible, like you mattered. Outside academics, Isabel had a passion for photography. Her Instagram was filled with black and white portraits, sunrises, forgotten alleyways, and soft moments between strangers. One photo, a shot of a couple laughing under a rain-soaked umbrella, went viral. But she didn't care for fame. For her, photography was about freezing the small miracles of everyday life. Friends recall that she loved coffee shops, indie rock, sunflowers, and writing short letters she'd never send. She kept a journal, leather-bound, frayed at the edges, where she poured her thoughts, fears, and hopes. In one entry, dated just a month before her death, she wrote, "I think love should feel safe, like coming home after a long trip, like breath returning to the lungs after a storm." But Isabel's story is not just one of light. Like many women, she experienced the kind of love that begins as warmth and ends in suffocation. She met Nathan Pierce in her second year of college, a charming business major with sharp wit and striking eyes. They met in a photography elective. He offered to help carry her tripod after class. That's how it always starts, small gestures wrapped in charm. In the beginning, he made her laugh. He bought her roses, cooked for her, left sweet notes on her windshield. Isabel's friends noticed how happy she seemed at first. But love, especially the wrong kind, can be blinding. Over time, cracks appeared. Nathan grew possessive. He'd text her constantly. "Where are you? Who are you with? Why didn't you respond?" He began showing up unannounced. He didn't like when she wore certain clothes. He accused her of flirting with classmates. Slowly, gently, and with precision, he began to isolate her. By the end of their relationship, Isabel had stopped seeing her friends. She missed classes. She deleted social media. She smiled less. When her best friend asked if everything was okay, Isabel forced a laugh and replied, "Forced laugh. He just loves me a lot, maybe too much." They broke up 8 months later, or rather, she broke it off. Isabel told her parents that she didn't feel safe anymore. She didn't go into details, but she changed the locks on her apartment door. She blocked his number. She even looked into getting a restraining order. But she never followed through. Maybe she thought it was over. Maybe she hoped that walking away would be enough. It wasn't. The weeks following the breakup were eerily calm. Nathan went silent. Isabel started to smile again. She went back to class, reconnected with old friends, began working on a photography series called Healing. Her family said she seemed lighter, as if she was finally breathing again. But behind that calm, obsession was growing. Unbeknownst to her, Nathan had been watching, tracking, planning. His love had curdled into something darker, something twisted. What Isabel didn't know, what no one could have imagined, was that she was being followed. That every step forward she took was being traced by a man who couldn't let go. This is the story of a life full of light, extinguished by a love turned violent. This is the story of Isabel Hartman, and the man who couldn't accept the word no. The end of a relationship should bring closure. For most people it does, but not for Nathan Pierce. When Isabel Hartman told him it was over, something inside him snapped. What started as heartbreak turned into obsession, calculated, silent, and dangerous. The breakup wasn't dramatic. There were no screaming matches or police calls. Isabel simply told him it wasn't working anymore, that she needed space, that she wanted to focus on her future and her well-being. She was calm, gentle, but firm. Nathan didn't take it well. At first it was denial. He sent her long texts, paragraphs begging for a second chance. He left voicemails telling her he'd change. He emailed her playlists of their songs. He even waited outside her lecture halls just to catch a glimpse of her. When that didn't work, the tone shifted. The messages became guilt-laced, then angry. He said she was cold, that she owed him more than just walking away, that after all they'd been through, she couldn't just forget him. To Isabel's credit, she didn't play into it. She blocked his number, removed him from her socials, and told her roommate to let her know if he showed up. She started walking home with friends and took the longer route to avoid places she knew he frequented. But Nathan found ways around the blockades. He created fake Instagram accounts, used Google Voice numbers, sent anonymous emails. When she changed her phone number, he began showing up in person instead, always under the excuse that he just wanted to talk. Once, he left a small box of Polaroids and a handwritten note at her apartment door. The message simply read, sternly, "You said you loved me once. Don't act like that meant nothing." The intensity was growing, but it was still subtle enough to avoid real suspicion from authorities. No threats, no violence, just a man who couldn't let go. But anyone who's been close to this kind of behavior knows obsession rarely starts loud. It festers in silence. Jenna, Isabel's roommate, started noticing the strain, observing. She triple-checked the locks at night. She jumped at knocks on the door, hi, and she stopped posting anything online, not even her photography. Realizing, that's when I knew she wasn't just sad, she was scared. Nathan's obsession wasn't just emotional anymore. It was becoming physical. People reported seeing him near Isabel's building. Her co-worker at the bookstore said he came in once, pretending to browse but never bought anything. He just watched her from the nonfiction aisle. Then came the night he followed her. She'd gone out with a small group of friends to celebrate a classmate's birthday. Isabel was cautious as always, but tried to have a normal evening. She smiled. She danced a little. For a few hours, she let herself feel like a 22-year-old again. But someone was watching. When she left the bar around 11 p.m., she noticed a dark sedan pull out from the side street as she walked to her rideshare pickup spot. It didn't follow her all the way home, at least not close enough to confirm. But something about it made her uneasy. The next day, she asked Jenna if she had noticed any strange cars parked on their block. Jenna hadn't. Neither had the neighbors. But that didn't ease the feeling Isabel was starting to carry with her everywhere. Like eyes were always on her. Nathan's spiral wasn't just emotional chaos. It was calculated. He kept a notebook, discovered later by investigators, filled with obsessive entries, notes about Isabel's routine, what days she had class, what time she left for work, who she was seen with, photos printed from old social media posts, even screen captures of text messages, preserved like memories in a shrine. One entry read, angry, "I won't let her erase me, determined. If I can't have her, no one will." He was no longer trying to get her back. He was trying to control the narrative, to rewrite the ending. In his mind, the breakup wasn't just a rejection. It was betrayal. And betrayal to someone like Nathan was unforgivable. Isabel never fully let on how deep the fear had gotten. She was private, proud. She didn't want to burden her parents, who lived hours away. She didn't want her friends to panic. But she did confide in her sister Rachel in a phone call just a week before her death. Rachel later recalled the conversation. Uneasy, she told me she had a weird feeling, whispering that she was being watched. Concerned, I told her to go to the police, but she said there wasn't any real evidence. She didn't want to make it a thing unless it had to be. That's the cruel reality of stalking behavior. It often lives in the gray area, just enough to terrify the victim, but not enough to sound alarms. Isabel was stuck in that gray area, walking a tightrope between normal life and constant dread. Still, she tried to move forward. She started applying for internships, signed up for a weekend photography class, even joined a therapy group for young women dealing with relationship trauma. She was fighting to reclaim her life inch by inch. But behind the scenes, Nathan was tightening the grip. He began driving past her job, parking outside her building for hours, following friends she was tagged with online, and worst of all, he was fantasizing about a violent end. His search history showed late-night visits to forums about breakups, revenge, and even how to make someone regret leaving you permanently. Investigators would later uncover internet searches for how long it takes for a restraining order to process and ways to sneak into a building unnoticed. He wasn't thinking clearly, but he was thinking deliberately. And Isabel, she had no idea how close he was getting. On a Thursday afternoon, she told Jenna she'd be working late on a paper and didn't want to be disturbed. She turned off her location on Snapchat and put her phone on silent. That night, Nathan was seen by two people parked just 2 blocks away from her apartment. He sat there for hours, not moving, not texting, just watching. Not nobody called the police. Really tail. Why would they? He hadn't done anything. Yet, this was the calm before the storm, the part of the story where the audience holds its breath, knowing something is about to happen. But for Isabel, there were no flashing warning signs, no dramatic confrontation, just a slow, creeping sense of danger that was getting harder to deny. And then it happened, but not yet. The line between obsession and violence is razor thin, and Nathan was about to cross it. The final days of Isabel Hartman's life weren't filled with chaos or loud warning signs. They were quiet, subtle, almost normal. And maybe that's what made it all the more horrifying. It started on a Monday morning. Isabel woke up early, as she often did, and made coffee for herself and her roommate Jenna. She had a big presentation due that afternoon for her advanced media studies class, a photo essay titled Quiet Corners of a Loud World. It was personal, powerful. Her professor had called it poetic and raw, the kind of project that could lead to gallery interest if she kept building on it. She left the apartment around 9:30 a.m., camera bag over her shoulder, and headed to campus. It was a cold day, the sky overcast and still. She wore a gray hoodie under her denim jacket and black jeans. Nothing out of the ordinary, except someone was watching her again. Security footage from a nearby convenience store would later show a black sedan parked just around the corner from her building. Nathan Pierce, her ex-boyfriend, was behind the wheel. He didn't get out, he didn't call her. He just sat there, engine running, eyes fixed on the street like a hunter tracking prey. Over the next 48 hours, Isabel had no idea how closely Nathan was monitoring her. On Tuesday, she stopped by the bookstore where she worked part-time. She chatted with her manager, rang up customers, and even shared a few laughs with a coworker about a weirdly titled self-help book someone returned. She seemed okay, maybe even happy, but behind her smile was caution. Jenna later said Isabel had begun locking her bedroom door at night, even though they were the only two living in the apartment. Serious. She didn't say why, Jenna said, but I could tell something was bothering her. Short pause. She flinched when the doorbell rang. She kept her curtains drawn. She had started double-checking the windows too. That evening, Isabel received an email from an unrecognized address. The subject line read, "This doesn't have to end like this." She didn't reply. She forwarded it to a folder she had titled Nathan, Evidence, a digital archive she'd been quietly building over the past 3 weeks. Screenshots, emails, and messages she hadn't shared with anyone yet, not even the police. Maybe she thought she could manage it, or maybe she feared that involving authorities would only escalate things. But the archive tells the truth. She was documenting her fear. On Wednesday, her last day alive, Isabel spent the morning editing photos. She had submitted a few to an online photography contest and was excited about one in particular, a black and white image of a homeless man and his dog sleeping beside a city mural that read, "Love always wins." She had a class at 1 p.m., then stopped at a nearby cafe around 3:15. She ordered a chai latte and sat by the window, sketching ideas in her notebook. That's where a witness saw her and saw him. Nathan standing across the street. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't even pretending to walk by. He stood there, completely still, watching through the cafe window. The witness, a barista named Elena, later told police. Nervously, it was creepy. He didn't move for like 10 minutes, just stood there, staring. When Isabel noticed him, she froze. Her hand dropped from her pen. Her face went pale. She immediately stood up, left the cafe through the side door, and called Jenna. Jenna said Isabel sounded panicked, concerned. She asked if I could meet her at the apartment. She didn't explain why, but I knew. I knew it was about him. That evening, the two of them sat on the couch in silence. Jenna offered to sleep in Isabel's room with her, but Isabel declined. She didn't want to feel like she was being coddled. She just wanted it to stop. She wanted to be safe again. And that's what makes what happened next so cruel. At 10:42 p.m., surveillance footage shows Nathan parking his car 3 blocks away from Isabel's apartment. He wore a black hoodie, gloves, and carried what looked like a duffel bag. He walked calmly, deliberately, like he'd done it before, or had planned it for weeks. He approached the side of the building. The cameras lost him briefly in a blind spot. When he reappeared in the next angle, he was climbing the fire escape directly to Isabel's window. Inside, she was lying in bed. Her laptop was still open. Netflix paused on the "Are you still watching" screen. She had fallen asleep wearing headphones. She didn't hear the window open. What happened next is still partially speculative, but the evidence is chilling. There were no screams, no struggle. The medical examiner confirmed that Isabel was attacked in her sleep. Her headphones were still tangled in her hair when first responders arrived. Nathan stabbed her multiple times, quickly and brutally. The attack was fast, precise, not a random act of rage, but something premeditated. Jenna was the one who found her. She had gotten up around 2 a.m. to use the bathroom and noticed Isabel's bedroom door slightly ajar, even though it was always shut at night. Something felt wrong. She knocked once, no answer. She pushed the door open and screamed. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but it was too late. The coroner would later state that Isabel had likely died around 11:30 p.m., less than an hour after Nathan entered her apartment. Nathan was gone. He didn't take anything, didn't leave a message. He simply vanished into the night. But the trail he left behind was damning. His car was discovered the next morning, abandoned near a wooded area 15 miles outside the city. Inside it, investigators found gloves, a bloodied hoodie, and the duffel bag, empty. But most disturbing was what they found in the glove compartment. A printed photo of Isabel, taken weeks earlier with a note on the back that read, "I told you you're mine." In just 72 hours, a young woman's life, filled with dreams, creativity, and love, was taken by someone who couldn't let go. Isabel did everything she could. She blocked him, she avoided him, she documented his behavior. But in the end, obsession proved deadlier than anyone imagined, and the world lost a light it never should have had to lose. The crime scene was quiet, sealed off behind yellow tape and guarded by 2 stunned officers who hadn't expected to respond to something this brutal that early in the morning. Flashing red and blue lights bathed the street in color. Neighbors watched from behind curtains, whispering. Some cried, others just stared, unsure if what they'd heard, a girl murdered in her bed, could possibly be real. But it was. Isabel Hartman was gone. Detective Laura Mendez was assigned to lead the investigation. A 16-year veteran of the force, she had seen her share of domestic violence cases. Jealous lovers, bitter breakups, restraining orders ignored. But something about this felt different. It was cold, calculated, personal. Her team entered the apartment just before 6 a.m. Jenna, Isabel's roommate, was sitting on the living room couch, wrapped in a blanket, sobbing into her sleeve. She had been the one to call 911. Memohiko will fry will opshard a lihutau. Her voice on the dispatch tape trembled with shock. "She's not waking up. There's so much blood. Please, get someone here." Isabel's bedroom was still. The bedding soaked. A pair of headphones dangled off the side of the mattress. The Netflix screen glowed from her laptop in the corner, asking, "Are you still watching?" Detective Mendez moved through the room slowly. There was no forced entry, no signs of a struggle. No screams were reported by neighbors. The window was unlocked, slightly ajar. The fire escape just outside explained everything. The killer had come through the window. Within an hour, crime scene investigators began collecting evidence. Fingerprints, stray hairs, fabric fibers. But it didn't take long to focus in on the most likely suspect, Nathan Pierce. His name was found multiple times in Isabel's digital folder labeled Nathan Evidence. Inside were screenshots of threatening texts, emails, and DMs. There were photos of him parked outside her building, notes she had taken about his behavior, including dates and times. She had been tracking him, preparing perhaps to go to the police, but she never got the chance. Detective Mendez's team pulled Nathan's name into the system. He had no previous record, no violent offenses, no formal restraining order filed by Isabel. But what they found next made everyone's stomach turn. He had been researching her constantly. Search engine logs later pulled from his devices revealed dozens of queries over the past few weeks. How to sneak into a second-story apartment? How long does it take for someone to die from a stab wound? Can deleted texts be recovered? Warrants were issued immediately for Nathan's apartment, his phone records, and his online accounts. His landlord confirmed that he hadn't seen Nathan in 3 days. Neighbors reported hearing someone moving things out of the unit late at night, possibly the night of the murder. Inside Nathan's apartment, detectives found what they feared most, a wall covered in photos of Isabel. Some were from her Instagram. Others were clearly taken without her knowledge, at the cafe, on campus, even one through the window of her apartment. Beneath the wall was a notebook, spiral-bound, black cover. Inside were journal entries written in uneven handwriting. Thoughtful. She keeps running, obsessed. I know she still loves me. She just doesn't remember how. Determined. I can't watch her be with someone else. I won't. The final page simply read, ominous. Soon. Detective Mendez stood in that small, quiet apartment and knew they were hunting a killer who had crossed a line, one he could never come back from. Within hours, a BOLO, be on the lookout, alert was issued. Nathan Pierce, age 24, 6 feet 1 inch brown hair, last seen in a black hoodie and jeans, considered armed and dangerous. His car, a black 2008 Honda Civic, was also flagged. The search widened. Police departments across the state were notified. Surveillance footage from traffic cams was combed through. Helicopters were launched. Every second that passed felt heavier, more dangerous. And then they found it. Nathan's car was located by a park ranger near the Pinewood Trailhead, 15 miles outside the city. It was abandoned, partially hidden under tree cover. Inside, police found damning evidence. A pair of gloves soaked in blood, a knife in a plastic bag, and the hoodie Isabel's roommate described him wearing the night she died. But Nathan himself was nowhere to be found. Is inside that Hidman Senate, it gets skis as Megalsey come down. Canine units were dispatched. Drones scanned the nearby woods. The terrain was dense and unforgiving. Hills, trees, old cabins scattered throughout the area. Every rustle in the underbrush felt like it could be him. But the trail quickly went cold. It was as if he had vanished into the trees. Back in the city, the public began to panic. News stations ran the story on a loop. Urgent. Local woman murdered by stalker X. Killer still on the run. Isabel's family, devastated, made a public plea for information. Her sister, Miranda, stood in front of a crowd of reporters, voice shaking, eyes red. Sobbing. Please, pleading. If anyone sees him, if anyone knows anything, come forward. Don't let this monster disappear. Tips flooded in, some credible, most not. Someone claimed to have seen Nathan boarding a bus to Chicago. Another said they saw him sleeping near a gas station in Indiana. Nothing panned out. But then came the message that changed everything. An email was sent to a crime reporter at the Daily Chronicle. It was untraceable, routed through layers of proxies. But the message was clear. Calmly. I did what I had to do. Unremorseful. They'll never understand, but she does. Detective Mendez reviewed the photo's metadata. It had been stripped clean, no geolocation, no date stamp. Whoever sent it knew how to cover their tracks. But the signature, the phrasing, it was Nathan. The manhunt intensified. Forensic psychologists were brought in to build a profile. According to them, Nathan was likely spiraling, detached from reality, capable of harming again, especially if he felt cornered. For the next several weeks, the police searched. Every lead, every whisper, every shadow that looked like a man in a hoodie was pursued, but Nathan remained invisible. Some began to speculate. Had he taken his own life in the woods? Was he living off the grid? Had someone helped him escape? No body was ever found, and the notebook he left behind, filled with obsession, denial, and darkness, offered no closure. Only one haunting truth: he didn't think he had done anything wrong. To him, Isabel was never a victim. She was part of his story, and that's what terrified the investigators most, because killers who see themselves as the hero don't stop. The news of Isabel Hartman's murder did not fade quietly into the background. It thundered through headlines, talk shows, college campuses, and social media feeds. Her smiling face became a symbol of vulnerability, of what was lost, and of what should have been prevented. In the days following the discovery of Nathan's abandoned car and the chilling email to the press, fear wrapped its fingers tightly around the community. Isabel's neighborhood transformed into a place of memorials and mourning. Her apartment window was covered with sticky notes, messages of love, pain, and outrage. Flowers piled on the stoop, candles burned through the night. Yet what gripped people most wasn't just the murder itself. It was the slow realization that this tragedy hadn't come out of nowhere. Isabel had known she was in danger. She'd told friends, documented threats, changed routines, and still the system failed to protect her. Her sister Miranda gave a televised interview days later, sitting in a chair opposite a journalist on a nationally syndicated news show. She looked hollowed out, her voice flat but piercing. She tried to be strong, she tried to be safe, but no matter how loud she screamed, it wasn't loud enough. Across the nation, protests and vigils erupted. Students at Isabel's university held a candlelight march, thousands strong, wearing purple ribbons for victims of domestic violence and stalking. Professors spoke, friends sobbed, and in the center of it all, Isabel's absence weighed heavy, like fog. The public outcry, frustrated. The public demanded answers. Why hadn't the police acted sooner? Why hadn't Nathan been arrested or at least questioned when the stalking began? Why wasn't there a restraining order? The hard truth was that legally, Nathan hadn't broken a law until he took Isabel's life. And that's what enraged people the most. In the weeks that followed, opinion pieces flooded the media. Experts on criminal psychology, domestic abuse, and women's safety took to the airwaves. Advocates pushed for urgent reform, citing Isabel's case as a tragic example of everything wrong with the reactive nature of the system. One headline in the Chronicle read, gravely, "She documented her stalker, she still died." The piece outlined Isabel's digital file, the texts, screenshots, time logs, and made the argument that victims shouldn't have to die before being taken seriously. Online, survivors began sharing their own stories, strategies of being followed, of not being believed, of calling the police and being told to dismissively wait until something happens. For many, Isabel's face represented not just one murder, but hundreds of near misses and ignored red flags. Life without Isabel. Inside her family home, Miranda struggled to pick up the pieces. Their parents, once full of life, had retreated into silence. Isabel's bedroom remained untouched, a shrine to the daughter who never came home. Her art supplies were still scattered across her desk. Her camera bag rested in the corner unopened. They couldn't bring themselves to clean it. A month after the funeral, which had been filled with classmates, professors, childhood friends, and journalists, Miranda made a decision. She launched the Isabel Project, a nonprofit organization aimed at educating young people about the dangers of obsessive behavior and stalking. The foundation offered workshops, mental health resources, legal guidance, and a database where people could document suspicious or threatening behavior, something law enforcement could reference in real time. It gained national attention almost instantly. Celebrities donated, survivors volunteered, schools across the country began adopting the workshops into their programs. Isabel, even in death, had started a movement, the continuing search for Nathan Pierce. Despite the public pressure and expanded federal involvement, Nathan Pierce remained missing. Leads continued to trickle in. One tip placed him at a bus station in Nevada. Another claimed he was hiding in an underground bunker in Oregon. Yet every time authorities chased a shadow, it vanished. Some believed he had died in the woods near Pinewood Trail. Others were convinced he was alive and watching everything from a distance. Anonymous internet accounts would occasionally post cryptic messages on forums and true crime threads. Chillingly, "They'll never find me. Obsessed. I did it for love." None were ever confirmed to be from Nathan, but the fear they generated lingered. Detective Mendez never gave up. Even after the task force was dissolved and the media cycle slowed, she kept a folder marked Pierce on her desk. She believed that people like him couldn't stay silent forever. Obsession had a way of resurfacing. But for now, the trail was cold. The cultural shift. What came out of Isabel's case, beyond grief and outrage, was conversation, difficult but necessary. Colleges began hosting stalking awareness seminars. Tech companies introduced features allowing users to flag harassing messages with context, not just content. Police departments, under public pressure, reviewed their protocols for handling early stalking reports. Isabel's photo, a candid shot of her laughing, wind in her hair, unaware of the camera, was featured on the cover of Time magazine in an edition titled "The Cost of Not Listening." Isabel had become more than a victim. She had become a symbol of ignored warnings and preventable tragedy, but also a catalyst. 1 year later, on the one-year anniversary of Isabel's death, hundreds gathered at her university. They held hands, stood in silence, and released sky lanterns into the night air. Each lantern carried a note, a name of someone they had lost or feared losing. Some wrote Isabel's name. Others wrote their own, surviving stories that echoed hers. Miranda spoke again, this time standing stronger. Her voice didn't tremble. "We remember Isabel not because of how she died, but because of how she lived. Creative, kind, brave. She asked for help. And while the world failed her then, we won't fail the next girl." As the lanterns disappeared into the stars, something shifted. The story of Isabel Hartman wasn't over. It had just begun echoing in places her voice never reached. Courtrooms, campuses, family dinners, online feeds. And for as long as her killer remained free, her story would keep burning like a flare in the dark.